Good morning. This is Aya Sivijana and Aya Nianika live, or so it seems, at Pasadi Vihara. And we're going to discuss a sutta from the Majjhima Nikaya. But first, we'll pay respects to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham namasami. So, sutta that we're going to discuss, I will share here. And this is it's called the development of the faculties, Indriya Bhavana Sutta. And this is the last sutta it's the very last sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya. It's 152. And this sutta strikes me every time I read it. It's just like such a deep sutta. And I've been contemplating it the last couple of days. But it starts out with the Brahmin. Hello, Mudita. Welcome. It starts out with the Brahmin student approaching the Buddha. And I'll just start reading. And then as we go along, I'll make some comments about it. But this is the Buddha is going to start discussing some pretty advanced practice. And you have to understand that he's talking to Ananda. And Ananda has probably at least entered the stream at this point. And it's said that he didn't attain arahantship until after the Buddha passed away. So there's always this discussion between the Brahmins or the Brahmin students and the Buddha, and they get into very deep conversation. So we'll start. At one time, the Buddha was staying near Kajangala in the bamboo grove. Then the student Uttara, a pupil of the Brahmin Parasariya, approached the Buddha and exchanged greetings with him. Excuse me. When the greetings and polite conversation were over, he sat down to one side. The Buddha said to him, Uttara, does Parasariya teach his disciples the development of the faculties? So this is the 6 faculties. I don't know how they discern when in a conversation like this, but the 6 sense faculties. And then the Brahmin student answers, he does, Master Gotama. But how does he teach it? Master Gotama, it's when the eye sees no sight and the ear hears no sound. That's how Parasariya teaches his disciples the development of the faculties. Do you have anything? Nyanika has
It's very similar. Yeah.
the Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. So there's nothing if something stands out, please.
One does not see forms with the eye, one does not hear sounds with the ear. It is good, nice to have a second rendering.
So that's how, excuse me, that's how Parasariya teaches his disciples the development of the faculties. In that case, Uttara, a blind person and a deaf person will have developed faculties according to what Parasariya says. For a blind person sees no sight with the eye, and a deaf person hears no sound with the ear. When he said this, Uttara was silent, dismayed, shoulders drooping, downcast, depressed, with nothing to say. So he's a little flabbergasted here.
I like the word Bhikkhu Bodhi uses glum.
He's glum.
He's glum.
Oh, poor friend. So sometimes the Buddha uses these kind of shocking statements to kind of stir people up to think about what they're thinking or saying. Knowing this, the Buddha addressed Venerable Ananda. Ananda, the development of the faculties taught by Parasariya is quite different from the supreme development of the faculties in the training of the noble ones. Now, Ananda becomes very excited. Now is the time, Blessed One. Now is the time, Holy One. Let the Buddha teach the supreme development of the faculties in the training of the noble ones.
Would you like the note on what the development of the faculties?
Yeah, just as soon as I finish the sentence.
Excellent.
Okay. The mendicants will listen and remember it. So we'll go back, but I just want to comment on this. What he's saying here is it's assumed that there's other monastics in the presence here, not just the two just that are in the conversation with the Buddha, not just the Brahmin student and the and Ananda. So there's a note here.
When I read this sentence, I also just love this closeness that Ananda has with the Buddha to say, now's the time, now's the time. I just think there's something really sweet about that.
Yeah, this is very sweet. So and then the Buddha also like this is kind of like a setup for this conversation in a way.
Yeah.
And hopefully the Brahmin student will benefit from this. But you have a note here.
So this is a note on the development of the faculties from Bhikkhu Bodhi's comments. The expression, the development of the faculties, the Indriya Bhavana, properly signifies the development of the mind in responding to the objects experienced through the sense faculties. The more rudimentary aspect of this practice, the restraint of the sense faculties, Indriya Samvara, involves controlling the mind in such a way that one does not grasp at signs and features of things. Their distinctive, attractive, and repulsive attributes. The development of the faculties carries this process of control through to the point where, by any act of will, one can immediately set up insight, even in the course of sense perception. At the highest level, one acquires the ability to radically transform the subjective significance of perceptual objects themselves, making them appear in a mode that is very opposite of the way they are normally apprehended. Well, that was the whole sutta.
Yeah, so this is kind of a summary in advance of the sutta.
Yeah.
And what this also is implying from the note is that this is advanced practice. So at first, we're working with the restraint of the sense faculty. So, and that a lot of it is bringing awareness to what is arising. So the rising of Vedana, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, and then the potentially arising of unwholesome states that are associated with those, with the Vedana. So a pleasant contact may bring up desire or lust. Unpleasant might bring up anger or hatred. And then neutral would it would be delusion. You wouldn't even maybe pay attention to it at all. So that is kind of the advanced, this is the advanced practice here that we're starting to embark on when the Buddha starts speaking. And how, Ananda, is there the supreme development of the faculties in the training of the noble one? When a mendicant sees a sight with their eyes, in them arises what is agreeable, that's pleasant, what is disagreeable, that's unpleasant, and what's both agreeable and disagreeable.
Okay, there's quite a long comment on that too.
So this does say, it does say pleasant here, manapa, and then disagreeable, amanapam. This arises, these arise, and then what is not agreeable or pleasant or unpleasant. And what did you say? How is this a little bit? Is another note?
Yeah, there's a fairly informative note. The commentary explains that when a desirable form comes into the range of the eye, an agreeable state, what I had just mentioned, the manapa, arises. When an undesirable form appears, disagreeable state, amanapa, arises. And when an indifferent form appears, a state that is both agreeable and disagreeable arises. It should be noted that though these three terms are ordinarily used to qualify the sense objects, here they also seem to signify subtle states of liking, aversion, and dull indifference that arise due to the influence of the underlying tendencies. Another commentary identifies the agreeable with wholesome and unwholesome states of mind associated with joy, the disagreeable with unwholesome states of mind associated with grief, displeasure, and the agreeable and disagreeable with states of mind associated with equanimous feelings. So these are commentarial.
Mm. But this makes sense in the sutta as we go along. Because it might become confusing if you don't have that background. So and as I was saying, the agreeable or the pleasant often evokes, or it could be our perception of something as pleasant or agreeable is based on our desire for things and what is desirable to us. So there's a subtle kind of thing that something could be pleasant, but it isn't, well, there may be just this tiny flicker of, well, here, we'll get to that. Flicker. Okay. So when this happens, when there's contact, and this is like they're just going through all three. So usually what happens, one or the other will arise. Either it's agreeable or disagreeable or neither agreeable or disagreeable. But it says they understand what is agreeable, what is disagreeable, and what is both agreeable and disagreeable have arisen in me. So I think this would be moment to moment to moment. They'll see this, oh, this agreeable has arisen in me. Contact. This contact is disagreeable or agreeable or neither. And that's crude and dependently originated. But this is peaceful and sublime, namely equanimity. This is upekkha. And disinterested or unaffected, that would be more tainted with aversion. But the real upekkha, to be a wholesome state, is looks on. So we're aware with equanimity, mental balance, equanimity, equipoise, non-reactivity, composure. So this is more the wholesome quality of it rather than Who cares? It has some slight aversive. It's just the calm, and so that's why it's peaceful, sublime. Is there a note here?
After the next sentence, but it still applies. I could read it now.
Well, I'll just read the next sentence and then you can read that. Then the agreeable, the disagreeable, and both the agreeable and disagreeable that arose in them cease, and equanimity becomes stabilized.
Okay, so the commentary says, this equanimity is the equanimity of insight, vipassana upekkha. The bhikkhu does not allow his mind to be overcome by lust, hate, or delusion, but comprehends the object and sets up insight in the neutral state. And the further commentary explains this to mean that he enters into equanimity regarding formations, sankhara upekkha, a particular stage of insight knowledge. Well, that's lovely.
That's beautiful. So this is happening very quickly. And it's like the mind is very quick to see the Vedana and then the underlying tendencies that's kind of bound up with it. And then the simile comes.
Mm.
It's like how a person with clear eyes might open their eyes and shut them, or might shut their eyes and open them. Such is the speed, the swiftness, the ease with which anything agreeable, disagreeable, and both agreeable and disagreeable that arose in them cease, and equanimity becomes stabilized. So this is with a lot of awareness. It's not, you notice that both it's opening and closing the eyes. So there's a really very quick seeing the conditionality and then seeing that as course and then establishing equanimity in accord in relationship to the contact.
Okay, and the sub-commentary says, the noble development of the faculties is the suppression of lust, etc., the defilements, arisen through the eye, and the establishment of the equanimity of insight. I would also say that it's using insight in order to know to suppress. Because it's already aware of the unwholesome qualities of kilesas. So of course you're going to put that down and reestablish the equanimity. I kind of feel like it's circular. It's not that insight comes after the equanimity. What do you think, Aya?
Well, the equanimity is stabilized because that's stabilizing the equanimity. I think the further reflection.
Further reflection. That makes sense.
Yeah. I think it could even be simultaneously, and because when in speech you can't, it's harder to express that. Or just so quickly, it's almost simultaneous.
It's pretty quick, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't think it comes just like, oh, and now I'm going to be equanimous. It's like there's been a cultivation of the practice of equipoise and balance. And so you know the state and you know how much better that tastes and feels and how much more supportive it is for practice. And so there's already some knowledge of when lust arises or anger or whatever, that of course I'm going to put that down and go back to balance. The Buddha told me, and it feels better.
Yeah, it just becomes without internal.
Mm-hmm.
It may start out, and we'll see here. It's going to be discussed, especially in the notes. It's good that whole process is starting to be. It'll be discussed. Sorry,
hopeful sutta. Don't worry. I mean,
I'm trying to get it so I can read, and then so you're in the screen.
yeah.
Okay, furthermore, when a mendicant hears a sound with their ears that is agreeable and disagreeable, and both agreeable and disagreeable, they understand what is agreeable, what is disagreeable, and what is both agreeable and disagreeable have arisen in me, that's condition crude, dependently originated. So this would be also the practice too, just to see that the crudeness of it.
Hmm.
But they have had the experience of equanimity, which is what Ayanika was saying. So they said, but this is peaceful and sublime, namely equanimity. So they're turning their mind towards equanimity. Then the agreeable, the disagreeable, and the both agreeable and disagreeable that arose in them cease, and equanimity becomes established. It's like how a strong person can effortlessly snap their fingers, such as the speed, swiftness, and ease with which anything agreeable, disagreeable, and both agreeable and disagreeable that arose in them cease, and equanimity becomes established. So that's sound. There, he's using sound as a simile. It's very quick. In the training of the noble disciple, this is called the supreme development of the faculties regarding sounds known by the ear. So there's still this wavering here because the agreeable, disagreeable, and the neutral are still rising. Furthermore, a mendicant smells an odor with their nose, agreeable and the disagreeable, and both the agreeable and disagreeable arise in them. They understand what is agreeable, what is disagreeable, and what is both agreeable and disagreeable have arisen in me. That's conditioned, crude, and dependently originated. But this is peaceful and sublime, namely equanimity. Then the agreeable, the disagreeable, and both the agreeable and disagreeable that arose in them cease, and equanimity becomes established. It's like how a drop of water would roll off a gently sloping lotus leaf and would not stay there. Such is the speed, the swiftness, and the ease with which anything agreeable, disagreeable, and both agreeable and disagreeable that arose in them cease, and equanimity becomes established. In the training of the noble ones, this is called a supreme development of the faculties regarding smells known by the nose. Furthermore, when a monastic tastes a flavor with their tongue, the agreeable, the disagreeable, and both agreeable and disagreeable arise in them. They understand what is agreeable, what is disagreeable, and what is both agreeable and disagreeable have arisen in me. That's conditioned, crude, and dependently originated. But this is peaceful and sublime, excuse me, namely equanimity. Then, excuse me. Then the agreeable and disagreeable, and both the agreeable and disagreeable that arose in them cease, and equanimity becomes established. It's like how a strong person who's formed a glob of spit on the tip of their tongue could easily spit it out. It is such as the speed, the swiftness, the ease with which anything agreeable, disagreeable, and both agreeable and disagreeable that arose in them cease, and equanimity becomes established. In the training of the noble ones, this is called the supreme development of the faculties regarding tastes known by the tongue. Furthermore, when a mendicant feels a touch with the body, the agreeable, the disagreeable, and the both agreeable and disagreeable rise in them. They understand what is agreeable, what is disagreeable, and what is both agreeable and disagreeable have arisen in me. That's conditioned, crude, dependently originated. But this is peaceful, sublime, namely equanimity. Then the agreeable, the disagreeable, and both agreeable and disagreeable that arose in them cease, and equanimity becomes established. It's like how a strong person can extend or contract their arm, such as the speed, the swiftness, the ease with which anything agreeable, disagreeable, and both agreeable and disagreeable that arose in them cease, and equanimity becomes established. In the training of the noble ones, this is called the supreme development of the faculties regarding touches known by the body. Furthermore, when a mendicant knows a thought with their mind, agreeable, the disagreeable, and both agreeable and disagreeable arise in them, they understand what is agreeable, what is disagreeable, and what is both agreeable and disagreeable have arisen in me. That's conditioned, crude, dependently originated, but this is peaceful and sublime, namely equanimity. Then the agreeable, disagreeable, and both agreeable and disagreeable that arose in them cease, and equanimity becomes established. It's like how a strong person would let 2 or 3 drops of water fall into an iron cauldron that had been heated all day. The drops would be slow to fall, but they quickly dry up and evaporate. Psh.
Right. And thinking about that, I mean, we know that drops aren't that slow, but relative to how fast they evaporate, the falling of that drop is slow.
Or it could be slow drips.
Mm-hmm. I like thinking even that the amount of time it takes for the drop to hit the, for it to come up in the body is relatively slow compared to how fast it can vanish.
So either way, yeah. So the drops would be slow to fall, but would quickly dry up and evaporate. Such is the speed, swiftness, and ease which anything agreeable, disagreeable, and both agreeable and disagreeable that arose in them cease, and equanimity becomes established. In the training of the noble ones, this is called the supreme development of the faculties regarding ideas known by the mind. So this is particularly with unwholesome mental states and just being very quick to see them. It's all about the mind. And particularly if we're just remembering something unpleasant and the anger is arising, but if we gonna nip it in the bud, see it immediately. Psh, this is the ideal. But you see here, this is the supreme development of the faculties. This is like once you've gotten quite far on the path, and then you're when it talks about a seikau, someone in training, that's usually someone who's entered the stream or above stream entry. So don't get disheartened if it it seems very difficult for most of us. If we're working with guarding or protecting the mind by guarding the sense faculties and just having the awareness when these unwholesome states are arising in relationship to weight enough, to pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, or agreeable, disagreeable, and neither disagreeable or agreeable.
Mm-hmm.
But I think also to emphasize that the agreeable and disagreeable and both agreeable and disagreeable, which is sometimes called neutral, these are tinged with defilement. According to, I mean,
Yeah.
these words here. So this is why this is a kind of a prelude to this next section, which might get confusing to people.
Do you wanna,
Is there a note?
well, the note is pretty simple it's on the, water drop one.
Okay,
That just saying that that also appears in another sutta. I think it's Majjhima 66. And it exactly what Ayasuvijana is saying, that sutta focuses a lot on, renunciation is not necessarily easy, but as you strengthen, it's like the difference between a quail who's tangled in a bush. Are the vines in the bush strong for that quail? Yes. If it were an elephant, would those twines, those vines be strong? No. And so as our practice progresses, we move from the frailness of a quail to the strength of an elephant. There's a bunch of similes in that sutta too. So take heart. We're becoming elephants.
training, or even training the elephants is,
Yeah.
so, and how are they, okay, so that's how there is supreme development. Okay, supreme develop, it's already developed. So remember these two words, supreme development of the faculties in the training of the noble one. And how are they practicing trainee? So this is, how are they a practicing trainee? So here's Seiko, Patipado, who's walking the path. And how does Bhante Bodhi translate this? How are they a practicing trainee?
A disciple in higher training.
A disciple in higher training. So Seika is in higher training. So that means they've entered the stream,
Yeah.
according to my understanding of it.
And I think the comment is exactly what you've already described. You
Okay.
don't need the details.
Okay. So when a mendicant sees a sight with their eyes, the agreeable, the disagreeable, and both the agreeable and disagreeable arise in them. They are horrified, repelled, and disgusted by that. So what happens is they are aware of the unwholesome state that is tangled up in that contact. So they're horrified, repelled, and disgusted. This sounds like pretty strong words, huh? So here we have, this is anyway, this is like we said before, but as we understand it, they see the underlying tendency associated with appealing and the unappealing, or the unpleasant and the neutral, the combination of agreeable and disagreeable. When they hear a sound with the ears, when they smell an odor with the nose, when they taste the flavor with the tongue, when they feel the touch with the body, when they know a thought with their mind, the agreeable, the disagreeable, and both the agreeable and disagreeable arise in them, they're horrified, repelled, disgusted by that. It's ashamed, or humiliated, or worried. I think so. There's immediately your get six at loathe, repulsed by, detest, shuns. So there's a lot of ways these words are translated, and it sounds pretty aversive, but I think what it is that person's really on guard, when they're in training and they become very sensitive to the arising of the unwholesome states, then there is a kind of like a nibbida, horror, or this, like you really want to snip it in the bud, but it's still arising. So they're like really motivated. Is there a note?
No, it's
Yeah,
about the Sakya. It's just what you've already
the
expressed.
Seika. Yeah,
Seka,
so
sorry.
some of the, and that's how they're a practicing trainee. So that's what my idea with this is, that they're so sensitive that to the unwholesome mental state that's arising, that it's like really repulsive. It's really like you know, so maybe that this doesn't sound like an equanimous state at all, right? But they're in training, so it's like yeah, you
Yeah,
start.
the phrase in the that I think that's helpful in the comment is that that they see it as impediments to their progress. So they're seeing, oh, this is not leading me where I want to go.
Maybe you should just read that anyway.
All right. Although the Seka has already entered upon the way to final deliverance, they are still prone to subtle states of liking, aversion, and dull indifference in regard to sense objects. They experience these, however, as impediments to their progress, and thus become repelled, humiliated, and disgusted by them. That is exactly what you've been
Yeah.
describing.
Yeah, so being repelled by them. Yeah. So, and it's the sensitivity,
Yeah.
I think is why it seems so strong. And so they're very motivated to abandon these unwholesome states. And how are they noble ones with developed faculties?
And the comment here is this is referring to the Arahant.
So, but I think this is a little bit helpful. I'll, there's something in the notes too that indicates it, but um, so, and how are they a noble one with developed faculties when a mendicant sees a sight with their eyes, the agreeable, the disagreeable, and both the agreeable and disagreeable arise in them, if they wish, may I meditate perceiving the unpleasant in the unrepulsive in the repulsive. That's what they do. Such. Let's see. Wishes for. So this is also talking about agreeable and disagreeable or repulsive.
Yeah, there is a comment on that one.
Okay.
Since the Arahant has eradicated all the defilements along with the underlying tendencies, in this passage, these terms of agreeable, disagreeable, etc., must be understood simply as the feelings that arise through contact with sense objects, and not as the subtle traces of liking, aversion, and indifference relevant to the preceding passage.
Okay. So then they've already developed this practice, because this is actually a practice, as they'll say later in the notes. If they wish, may I meditate perceiving the repulsive in the unrepulsive, that's what they do. If they wish, may I meditate perceiving the unrepulsive in the repulsive and the unrepulsive, that's what they do. If they wish, may I meditate perceiving the repulsive in the unrepulsive and the repulsive, that's what they do. So there's a different permutations of directing the mind and seeing all the different qualities in something. Because at first glance, it may seem unrepulsive or attractive. And then you see that what's not so beautiful about it. If they wish, may I meditate perceiving the repulsive in the unrepulsive and the repulsive, that's what they do. If they wish, may I meditate staying equanimous, mindful, and aware, rejecting both the repulsive and the unrepulsive, that's what they do. when they hear a sound with the ear, when they smell an odor with the tongue, when they taste a flavor with their, odor with their nose, excuse me, a taste with flavor with their tongue, when they feel a touch with their body, when they know a thought with their mind, agreeable, disagreeable, and both agreeable and disagreeable arise in them if they wish. And this whole thing is repeated. May I meditate, staying equanimous, mindful, aware, rejecting both the repulsive and repulsive. That's what they do.
Okay.
That's how how they are a noble one with developed faculties. And then here's a note.
Yes, quite a long and helpful note.
Yeah.
The Patisambhidamagga calls this practice the noble supernormal power, Arya Edi, sorry, and explains it thus. To abide perceiving the unrepulsive in the repulsive, one pervades a repulsive being with loving kindness, or one attends to a repulsive object, either animate or inanimate, as a mere assemblage of personal elements. So loving kindness or understanding the elements. To abide perceiving the repulsive in the unrepulsive, one pervades a essentially attractive person with the idea of foulness of the body, or one attends to an attractive object, either animate or inanimate, as impermanent. So it's the asubha or impermanence.
Anicca.
Anicca. The third and fourth methods involve the application of the first and second contemplations to both repulsive and unrepulsive objects without discrimination. So applying them to more neutral people and objects. And the fifth method involves the avoidance of joy and sorrow in response to the six sense objects, thus enabling one to abide in equanimity, mindful and fully aware. Sati Sampajana. Although this fivefold contemplation is ascribed to the Arahant as a power perfectly under their control, elsewhere the Buddha teaches it to the monastics still in training as a way to overcome the three unwholesome roots. And you can look at the note yourself to see references to the Anguttara 5. And then also for a thoughtful commentary on the sutta, see Nyanaponika Thera's The Roots of Good and Evil. And I believe that's one of the free books. I think you can find that online, The Roots of Good and Evil.
So the Anguttara Nikaya 5 point 144.
144, thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, so this is somebody who's mastered this already.
And yet
so
the Buddha teaches it to those of us without mastery.
So then it is possible for us to work with these when we're seeing desire that's unwholesome arising in our minds, and thinking of there's the gratification, the danger, and the escape too. So anicca is part of that, seeing the danger, that it's impermanent, it's not gonna last. We'll end up being unhappy because that pleasant sensation is gonna cease. And also the Subha practice for it's particularly lust that's not helpful at all. And so it's just contemplating the parts of the body. And but just to say that these are advanced practices, but we can make use of the metta bhavana when we're ever to help balance the mind. And on contemplating our own body, to develop equanimity, period. So these other practices are good just to be developing as we go along. So when we get to the point where we can really let go, then it's we have that already developed. So thank you so much
Do you want to read the finale part?
Is that the last? Oh, okay.
I mean, we
Okay.
that traditional wrap up.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, so may I meditate? So then, and that's how they are a noble one with developed faculties. So, Ananda, I have taught the supreme development of the faculties in training of a noble one, the noble one. That's his training. I have taught the practicing trainee. I have taught the noble one with developed faculties. Out of sympathy, I've done what a teacher should do who wants what's best for their disciples. Here there are roots of trees, and here there are empty huts. Practice absorption, Ananda. Don't be negligent. Don't regret it later. These are my instructions to you. That is what the Buddha said, satisfied. Venerable Ananda approved what the Buddha said. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Why don't you read what the end part that how Bhikkhu Bodhi has translated it?
So, Ananda, the supreme development of the faculties in the noble one's discipline has been taught by me. The disciple in higher training who has entered upon the way has been taught by me, and the noble one with developed faculties has been taught by me. What should be done for his disciples out of compassion by a teacher who sees their welfare has compassion for them, that I have done for you, Ananda. There are these roots of trees, these empty huts. Meditate, Ananda. Do not delay, or else you will regret it later. This is our instruction to you. That is what the Blessed One said. The Venerable Ananda was satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So now I don't know if I just see mudita here, an anonymous person. Is there any questions or comments on what we just read and looked into?
My comment is I find this sutta uplifting. It's like it because just even my own experience, the level at which I've experienced how much faster it is to see and let go, see and let go, see and let go, and to come back into the stability. And just to hear it described in the perfected state is so beautiful. It's like to understand that. Upasaka Mudita.
Yeah, can you unmute yourself? Or do you have a comment? Does she have a comment in the? There's a raised hand. As a comment in the.
Can you hear me? Hello?
There you-
Hello? Sorry, the Andrew's sleeping and the mic's on.
Okay.
Not working right. I put a question in the chat.
Okay, let's take a look. Let's stop the sharing. It'll be easier to see the.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. I can't see the chat when the share is on.
It's harder.
It'd be helpful to try to make note when the state arises. This is agreeable. This is disagreeable. To start, yes. Actually, if you just track, this is one thing that I've been thinking about. I spent a period of time just tracking the weight enough, the feelings that are that this is pleasant, this is unpleasant, and the neutral, bringing attention to the neutral more and more, because the neutral we tend to ignore. So if we're going out throughout our day, like the feeling of the water when I'm washing the dishes, and it's like a cold and it's unpleasant, and it's warming up and then it's pleasant. And so I could actually see the greed for the more pleasant state too. But yeah, just noting, if you just notice pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral through the day, that helps. And then also you can try to see if there's an they're tricky. The underlying tendencies are tricky. But if you do see that there's like strong desire arising, or even, like anger arising or something at the unpleasant, then you can be guarding your mind against those unwholesome states. So I think that's just to make note throughout the day, unpleasant, and neutral. I did that for like 5 months. I was at Amaravati as a layperson, and before I was received any form of ordination. And yeah, it was actually really helpful. And I started noticing more and more the neutral states, and even what I might have thought was pleasant or agreeable, it started to take on more a neutral. I didn't feel that strong pull.
Yeah.
I remember I was taking a walk and I looked out across this pasture land, and it was just so beautiful and everything like that. And I was going to leave Amaravati in a few days. And I didn't feel that pull like, oh, I won't be seeing this again, something like that. I just noticed that, oh, that's not there. It's not that it's completely gone, but that strong pull anyway wasn't there. I was perceiving, oh, this is pleasant. It's pleasant, it's nice, but it wasn't so
Sticky.
yeah, sticky. That's a good one. So yeah, thank you. That's a very good question. So this is our starting point. Is just bringing awareness to all of it. And I think yeah, it is step by step. So I think even when he talks about horror arising in somebody's mind, I don't think it's like such a disturbing thing. It's more like yeah, well, more like I'm not going to get close to that hot stove. I know I'll get burnt.
Yeah.
It's more like you kind of back away. It's like, I got burnt before. I know what that feels like, but it's not even thinking about it. You just like, don't touch the stove. So,
And it doesn't leave a residue. You just move away from the stove, but then you're not stuck in the, oh, that stove was hot and blah, blah, blah. What if I touched it? Blah, blah, blah. It's just stove hot, don't go. Done.
we're imagining. But it's step by step by step. So we shouldn't be hard on ourselves if we see that we're still greed or anger arises. It's like, oh, there it is. Whoops, there it is.
Yeah, that's what I like about the Majjhima 66 is, again, it gives me the hope of what the perfection looks like. But that, of course, with the strength you have now, it's not going to be so easy. You have to build your strength. You have to build your practice. And it's also this strong explanation of why build the practice, because just even imagining that state of balance and ease can say, yeah, okay, I want to keep going in that direction. Tough right now, but gonna be so worth it in the end.
And then we get that moments of equanimity when we experience equanimity, and then something eventually we can direct our minds to with practice.
Yeah, yeah. And when we see that we need to develop it, it's insight right there. That we're on the right track.
So we see the need. I see a further comment. We see the need now. And so that's a motivating factor. And so So not allowing that, seeing the need to be another, hindrance where it's grasping. It's like, oh yeah, it's, or I see the need to wash the dishes, so like I should go and just wash the dishes. Something like that. I see the need to do the practice, so I'll get on it. But you got to start where you are.
Yeah.
Yep. Start where you are. You can't, if the kitchen's a huge mess, you can't cook. So you got to clean the kitchen first. That's the metaphor. The first things first.
Sadhu.
Sadhu. So I guess we'll close if there is doesn't seem like there's any other comments.
Just signs of appreciation. So
Yeah, so we will turn toward the altar and pay respects. Araham Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivati Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sangham Namah. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
oh, I see the video, the camera's sitting here. We'll have to try that next time.
Thank you, Ayaz. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Okay.